All right, we're in AP Lit, talking about all the King's men, and we'll start with Lily and go to Owen.
So first of all, we like, in the beginning of the chapter with, Tom getting in the really bad car wreck. Willie has a conversation with Lucy on how he's been like, kind of like absent in his, upbringing, and, one of his reasonings is like, well, he wants him to be able to have a good childhood, or like, and be able to do whatever he wants growing up. And he thinks that by doing that, he's becoming a better parent, but what he doesn't realize is that being an absent parent is just causing his child to like run reckless and get into trouble and get hurt. And Lucy is realizing that Lily's never really been there for him.
Of course, you're a long way from being parents, but you will be someday, and you'll be surprised at the parent you turn out to be. You'll probably say, although you respect and love your parents, you're probably already making a mental, maybe unconscious list of how you are gonna do that, you're not gonna do that, you won't do that, and then when you become a parent, you'll make the other list. You'll say, man, that was just like my mom, or that was just like my dad. But he wants to treat him like he wasn't treated, and that's also typical. I've heard people say that. Owen, you wanna go, and we'll go to Lily.
I thought it was interesting how like, kinda Adam was, like, it was kinda, everyone was kinda skeptical, cause they're like, Willie's making a hospital, but they're like, I'm not sure if I wanna leave that, and he's like, he's kinda skeptical, but he's finally convinced that he'll, lead it, but just for the good of the people rather than for Willie. He hates Willie, but he just wants to, benefit, like, the people by leading it. So I just think it's interesting because Willie is, kind of atoning for his sins when he's making a hospital, but everyone's kind of skeptical, like they like it, but they're like, what's he planning?
See, I really think Willie's sincere. I mean, he's corrupt, but I really think he means it. I think he really does want to do good. Adam wants to do good. Let me go to Lydia.
Well, just like a point to add on to what Lily said, and also like, if you are that type of parent who, like, lets your kid do whatever, and kind of, well, if he was neglecting Tom, it makes Tom, or anyone for that matter, like, trying to get the attention of their parents, and so, like, I think that's why, like, he's doing all this stuff, so, like, I don't know, like, get his dad's attention.
So you're not really blaming Tom too much.
I mean, well, yeah, I don't know, but that could be a reason, like.
I totally agree.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We'll go to right here.
So there's one scene in the book that really, you can look at it and think there's not too much meaning about it, but I think that there is meaning in the scene where it's Jack and Anne are walking, because it goes on for so long, and to me, I think that it symbolizes like, they were friends a long time ago, but it's like when you get, you come in contact with someone you haven't seen in a while, there's so much you think about saying, but you don't really know how to say it, and so they just walked in silence for the longest time. So I feel like that's kind of what it was, because they haven't seen each other in a while, so there's so much like keeping them apart, even though they're right next to each other.
Do any of you have that? Have you ever had that experience? He talks about the friend of your youth. If you had a cousin or a friend that you knew when, and like y'all were like that, and maybe you get reattached to them, and it's not the same, it's just, you both have changed. You want it to be, you thought it'd be, but it isn't. It's kind of a sad realization, but I think that we've all experienced that. You just want to recreate what you had 10 years ago when you were kids, and it's just not there. But it seems to work with Anne, but not with Adam, because he doesn't say that about Anne. He says that he refers to Adam. Yeah, Lily.
To add on to what Owen's saying, that like Willie's really trying to atone kind of for whatever he's done. I don't think at the end when he's talking to Adam, he's saying that he's basically saying that the end justifies the
Yeah.
means. I don't think he actually believes that, because like Jack pointed out earlier with the deal with Tiny Duffy, if he really believed that, then he probably would have taken Tiny Duffy on his offer about to build the hospital for cheaper, just so that it could be done like quickly. So I guess
like is really trying to like make something good happen after all of his bribery and kind of corruption.
So a lot of you think it's just penance. It's just his way of trying to do good to make up for bad. That could be. I think that's clearly a part. Park, you had your hand up a few minutes ago.
I just was thinking about like the change that like the author made, like shows that Willie is trying to make change at throughout the story or this chapter, but then at the end with the affair with Anne, it's kind of like it's a reminder of the kind of man that like that we all know and that like
How he really is.
Yeah, how he really is, and that like he can't really get past that even if he tried.
Yeah, and I think to me, he's a great example. Yeah, he's that, but he's also that. It's almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which we will be able to read, hopefully at the end of the year. He's really two people. I mean, he sincerely wants to do good and for the common man. He hates the people that have run the state because they've misused the common man. But at the same time, he's strong-arm tactics, and he has affairs. He's unfaithful to his wife and to every other girl. You know, he's unfaithful to every girl because she probably told you're the only one, and then she wasn't, of course. So he's both of those things, Becca, and then.
Going back to like the hospitalization of Tom, you see like another side of William in the beginning of the chapter because he's like sweating bullets, and usually like all of his actions are planned.
Sorry, Willie, did you say?
Yeah. Usually all of his actions are like planned out and like he's slow moving, but now he's kind of hysterical, and I think the author's trying to show that he cares about more than just like power of wealth.
Yeah, I think so. I think he absolutely does. Yeah.
This is kind of building off of Ella, what, just the fact that he really wanted to do good. When he was talking to Adam, he said that this was one of the few things he wants to do completely clean, no blackmail or like dirty business, and he wants to do it for the common people. He wants to make it completely free, and anyone can come and they'll get like best in the state kind of medical care.
It-
That was like his selling point.
It seemed like several of you kind of have talked about that, but when you said it, it just made me realize, in that case, he wants the means and the end to both be right. He doesn't want just a good hospital. He wants, as you said, he wants it done cleanly, which is a change for him. He somewhere deep in him, he knows that what he's doing is wrong, and that is false. That the end doesn't justify the means. Emma Shea.
I thought it was interesting how much this book pushes the need for a father figure, because you can see how some of the characters turn out without it. And you can see that especially with Tom, that his dad he's never really around. And that kind of shows in his personality and character. And then you can also see that in Jack. And he did technically have a father figure, and he's not the best character, but he could have been a lot worse.
Are you saying maybe the judge was that father figure? Because he does have a father, well, he had a father who left him. So that doesn't count. That's not a very, he doesn't play much of a role in his life. So you're saying the need for a father figure, yeah, Clay.
I think it's interesting how he has a different moral philosophy in different areas of his life. Like when he's building this hospital, he doesn't want to cut any corners. He wants to be as thorough as possible, and he wants to do it in the most moral way. And his reasons are good, and he wants the outcome to be good. But then he's watching his son be just completely immoral and make stupid decisions, and yet his wife decides that, like, his wife is trying to make him take away football and stuff, but his dad doesn't really care. And I just find it interesting that he has that philosophy of like morality in politics now, but with his own son, he doesn't really reciprocate the same feelings.
Can you explain that? Why someone would be like that?
I can't.
I mean, it's typical, isn't it? That we have a high standard here, but we lower it in other places. We're even hypocritical. We have a high standard for that person, but a low standard for our. I think you're right. Yeah, Ian.
I think part of the encouragement for him to be having the hospitals completely clean and like no funny business run is that it's his legacy, and that's how he wants to be viewed like when he passes on, because everything in his life is much doing, dirty, like he's blackmailing people, he's bribing, he's threatening, but he wants, like the way he wants to be remembered is that hospital being completely good. And I think that's made like a good reason is why he wants it to be perfectly clean.
So it shows that he doesn't really believe that the end justifies the means. If he's going to he wants to even build a hospital cleanly, that obviously means a lot to him, yes.
Going on with what Ian said, I just think it's interesting how like Willie has these like good intentions for building the hospital, but it's, actually I don't really know if it was going on, I think it was, but I kind of went off track, but, he's like very adamant that that hospital is named after him, just like to keep on his legacy, and so that he portrays to the people that he is a good person, but it also shows a lot of pride because I feel like the most pride is shown in like wanting your name like big on the hospital, when in reality he could have just like let it be called something else, but he was just really wanted that as his like statement. But also I think it's interesting how like Adam, who is like one of the most innocent characters in the story, he gets trapped under that as becoming part of like Willie's administration, like as the hospital director. But like I think it's gonna be interesting to see how it turns out with Adam as the director, because he does show so much good in the novel, but like he's getting himself into an administration where they said they would be as like clean as possible, but I mean you have to like look at what has happened in the past. So.
That's not something he's gonna be able to control
Yeah.
completely.
And so it could easily manipulate
yeah.
him.
It could happen and he wouldn't know it, or it could happen and he couldn't do anything about it. It's an idealistic view, yes. Helen?
Just adding on to the idea of She's like the father figure thing, when Jack Burton finds the dirt on the Stanton's father, and Adam finds out, then he's like crushed because he idolized his father to an extent, I think, and so that's just like another way to see the father figure as well.
Which fits into this theme of everybody's bad, everybody's got something bad in them, because he didn't think so about his father, and now that his father has turned out to be he didn't take a bribe, he's not as bad as the judge, but he did cover for the judge, and that changes both his sister Anne and him. Do you think maybe that's one reason? I'll have to think of the chronology, but one reason that she ends up with Willie. It's almost like she doesn't care anymore. That person that you thought, we gave you a reason for being good, now isn't. And Adam the same way. See, they're both maybe disillusioned. Yeah, David.
So, I don't think the way Willie's going to make the hospital is all that moral in good. Because I thought about it this way, because Willie says he's making Adam the director, so Adam can do good. But in politics, when Willie had to make Hugh Miller resign, Hugh Miller was a relatively good person.
Yeah.
And he resigned so he could preserve his good name. And by thinking that Adam will somehow go different than him, I think is kind of disillusioned, because Adam's a truly good person and he wants to preserve his good name.
You're saying he's a bit naive. Willie? Willie's the hard-nosed politician. How could he be naive? But it sounds like you're right, that Hugh Miller didn't put up with it. Why would Adam? If Adam finds out some funny business is going on, he's going to lose Adam. I guess he's willing to take that chance. Clay and Patty.
I'll go ahead and go first.
Are you over here?
No, I'll go first. I noticed that, this is so awkward. I noticed that through this chapter, more than ever, I noticed the progression of Willie, how the more corrupt or the more deeper he's willing to go into this phase of politics only, he pushes more and more for the hospital being built. this chapter where he's actively getting dirt on people and he's actually made a few political moves, he now is actually pushing for the hospital, he's hiring people for it, and there's a more bigger focus on the hospital itself.
Yeah, yeah. I can't add to that, that's very well said, Patty.
I know what I said, Clint.
Throughout like the entire rest of the part of the book that we've read, like Willie, he's not a good guy, and so for him to even like want to be building this hospital is just sort of like out of character. And for him to be wanting to do it like cleanly, it's just not really like him. Like I never really would expect that from him. And then like at the end of the book when we like hear about like Anne, it kind of surprised me, but at the same time it didn't, because it sort of showed like that's who he is.
What does that say about Anne? That's who she is too. Even Anne, that was somebody Jack looked up to. And you'll see in the next chapter, he does what he always does when he has these traumatic emotional moments, he runs away. And so he runs away and has to deal with it that way. Well, unless anybody wants to add to what, I've just got a few areas I'd like to point out to you. I thought this was a great example. He was trying to explain to Jack or somebody, I don't know who was trying to explain, why he has his tactics the way he does. And Jack or somebody pointed out the fallacy in his reasoning. And I think he was coming up with dirt against somebody, and this was the governor's response. It may be fallacy, but is God sure useful? And not a few years ago, the leader of the Senate, Harry Reid, he made a comment that during the second election, re-election of Barack Obama, he made a comment that Mitt Romney had not paid taxes in 5 years. So for weeks and weeks, there was all this accusation, no taxes, a lot of this investigation. Election came, President Obama won, and he was later asked, do you regret saying that? Because it proved to be, there's nothing to it, he said. Well, it worked, didn't it? You know, it'd be like me saying to one of you guys, you know, just this absolute lie, and you get in trouble, and you lose or whatever, and are you regret doing it? He said, well, it worked. I wanted to get rid of them, you know, so it worked. I mean, to me, that's the same idea expressed here. It may be fallacy, but it sure is useful. I think that makes us really angry, that people lie or act like that. Just a couple of things I'd like for you to know. I thought this was funny. I don't have a page number, but Jack and Adam used to argue about things like, could a first-rate boxer beat a first-rate wrestler? You know, different things like that. It'd be like, could the 1927 Yankees beat the 2018 Dodgers or 2020 Dodgers? I just love those conversations. I bet you have somebody in your life that you've had conversations like that. It's just purely intellectual games, but it's just fun, and those are friends that you really cherish, because you're not talking about gossip, you're not talking about feelings, you're just exercising your mind. I don't know if I've got the same pages as you do, so I don't know how helpful this is going to be, but on 241, I made a note, is this the one, 241?
In the same chapter?
Yeah, I don't know, it's in chapter 6, but I'll read it and maybe you can find it. I don't know who he's talking about, but he says, I think it's Anne. Oh yeah, Anne, you know, met her in the bar, and this is what Jessica was talking about, I believe, about wandering. They just walked a walk. He says, she was standing there, not quite ready to start patting the blue carpet with an impatient toe, turning her smooth, cool face, parentheses under a light blue felt hat, slowly from one side to the other to survey the room. I caught the flash of blue in her eyes as she glanced about them. Then she spotted my back at the bar and came my way. I did not look around and did not meet her eyes in the mirror. When she was just behind me, she said, Jack. I didn't look around. I said, Slade, this strange woman keeps following me around, and I thought you ran a respectable place. What the hell are you doing going to do about it. And it's just that kind of humor. And he says, I turned around to face the reality, which was not something caught in the ice of the mind, but was something well flushed, feline, lethal, electric, about to blow a fuse. Well, I declare, I said, if it isn't my fiance, say Slade, I want you to meet Ann Stanton. We're going to get married. I don't know if you appreciate the humor, the way he treats these things. I thought was pretty funny. Let me just pick out one or two. 243. Again, you can look for this. There's a one. I'm going to read this sentence to you. And remember when we did the data sheets, and I said, how would you describe somebody's style? And I said, then give an example. This is his style. So about 10 lines from the top. Just bear with me a couple of minutes. I'm not going to do much of this, but I'm going to read you one sentence from the book. So see if you can follow me on this. A month from now, do you see that? If you're anywhere close, this is chapter 6. I don't know if you can find it. It starts about halfway through a paragraph that says, so we walked. And then it says this, a month from now, in early April, at the time when far away outside the city, the water hyacinths, that's not how you pronounce it, would be covering every inch of bayou, lagoon, creek, and backwater with a spiritual mauve to obscene purple, violet, vulgar, fleshy, solid, throttling mass of bloom over the black water, and the first heartbreaking, misty green, like girlhood dreams on the old cypresses, would have settled down to be leaf and not any thing else, sorry. And the arm-thick, mud-colored, slime-slick moccasins would have come out of the swamp and tried to cross the highway in front of your tire, hitting. One would have a slight bump and make a sound like kerwash and a tiny thump when he slapped heavily up the underside of the fender, and the insects would come boiling out of the swamp day and night, and the whole air would vibrate with them with a sound like an electric fan. If it was night, the owls back in the swamps would be a wooing and moaning, but like the love and death and damnation, or would sail out of the pitch dark and rays of your headlights plunge radiator like a ripped feather bolster, and fields would be deep in hairy, thick, juicy, thick grass, and it's not done. It goes on and on. Write this down if you want to write it down. This is an example of something I think we could call a stream of consciousness. And I hadn't planned to do this here. I guess it's as good as anything. I'll wait just a minute. We'll finish with this. But just write that, because we're gonna imitate that in just a minute to give you an idea of what that's like. And let's see if there's anything else would have time to. Yeah, page 256. He's talking about Hugh Miller again. He says things like 256, 257. Well, he was in with me, yeah, Attorney General, and he resigned. You know why? But he went on without waiting for the answer. He resigned because he wanted to keep his hands clean. He wanted the bricks, but just didn't know somebody has to paddle in the mud to make them. He was like somebody who just loves beefsteak, but just can't bear to go to the slaughter pen because there's some kind of bad, rough men down there who aren't animal lovers and ought to be reported to the SPCA. Well, he resigned. Then I'm skipping over. Yeah, old Hugh. He never learned that you can't have everything, that you can have mighty little, and you never have anything you don't make. Just because he inherited a little money and the name Miller, he thought you could have everything. Yeah, he wanted the last one thing you can inherit. You can't inherit. You know what it is? What? Goodness, just plain goodness, simple goodness. You got to make it, Doc, if you want it, and you've got to make it out of badness. And he goes on, just again an example of his style, how the author contemplates these thoughts. And then actually Willie is a socialist. If you see what he's advocating, socialist medicine. And at the end, of course, you know what happens. I was surprised, first time I read it, that she did that. I think it makes sense. The book's not over, but she is an idealist. Willie's an idealist. Jack, I think everybody has an idealist in them. This is the way it ought to be. And then you have this other side, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is how it really is. So you kind of waver between those two things. Anyway, you're going to be reading this next chapter for Friday. Just get out your notebook. I'm going to just give you a little exercise that might be useful. It is something we'll see again, particularly in the 20th century writing. So I have this little exercise.
Does it need to be on a piece of paper?
Yeah, it does. Oh, yeah. You need to write on a piece of paper. But this is just a little practice. We don't have time to do the whole thing, but I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write one sentence. And I don't care what it's about, just the first thing that pops in your mind. And I don't want you to put a period until I tell you to stop. So I want you to just keep writing. This would be, if you wrote this in essay form, it would be run on sentences, it'd be sentence fragment, mainly run on sentences, and it wouldn't be good. But in stream of consciousness in some fiction in the 20th century, this is what the authors do. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. I just want you to start writing and don't put a period. Keep writing. You can go like a dream. Go from one thing to the next, whatever. And then I'm going to ask you to read it and see what you think of it. So just, don't really think too much about what it is. Just begin. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and you may begin. Well, that's been 5 minutes. Was that hard to do? I mean, I wrote that. And, that's what you just did. I don't know if it makes sense. Does it make sense to anybody? Did it eventually, well, add another 5 minutes to that. I mean, we're not going to, but that's sort of what this stream of consciousness does. It's kind of I always liked it, because it didn't it just, whatever came to your mind, you kind of put down. But that would be an example of the style we just read. So I won't read your mind. You don't have to read me here unless you want to read it to somebody. I'm going to finish today. Again, just label that stream of consciousness. And
Are we gonna read them?
if anybody wants to read it, you're welcome to. Yeah.
Stand here.
That'd be fine.
Is everybody ready?
No.
Okay, today is a good day. I'm really happy today. Yesterday I got new shoes, so today I'm happy. There are a lot of thoughts going through my head right now, like why is this sentence still going on? I should have put a period like 10 seconds ago. Right there, should have been a period, but nope, just another comma, and we're still going. Maybe let's get a little spicy and throw in a semicolon. Oh, nice. You guys can't see it, but it's there, I promise. And it looks like kind of done.
That's all you
Clever.
That's all you wrote?
Yeah.
It's like
Look.
7 to
Yeah.
8 lines.
Oh, the whole thing?
All right, Lily's going to share hers.
Okay, from the day he saw her, the sun seemed to shine with a certain radiance that had never dared to show before, and the colors of the world glowed with a vibrant hue, almost exclaiming their happiness. Or perhaps it was just him, who, falling in love, realized another soul had the power to save his own, and turn his world into a meaningful work of art that would one day reflect on a canvas of life, portraying a human connection created with only the smallest fragment of a second that two eyes met in a mutual understanding of soulmates.
I think both of those capture what we're just trying to say, the style. It sounds a lot like his style. Long sentences are contemplative, not a lot happens. They're reflective on life, like your mind. So maybe I had to do that in college, by the way. I had to write a 500-word sentence. And I realized that was easier than I thought, maybe, because you didn't have to think or plan. Anybody else? Well, what I'd like to finish up is somewhere over here.
Shirley's a being.
You're like a author.
Do you like that?
I love it. I thought it was pretty.
Okay, yeah, we're both good.
I like those too. Read it. Read it. Read it, buddy.
It sounds a little bit like poetry, doesn't it?
Read it out loud, Lily.
Not
Lily, read it out loud to everybody.
Read it, read it.
Read it out loud.
I should have written about that. There's definitely
All right, here is one last thing. We won't be able to talk about it. You have about 7 minutes, but I would like you to work on this for Wednesday. If you don't finish it, like you know how we do this. Look for syntax. We just did an exercise in syntax. So see what you can do with your syntax. See if you notice the length of the sentences, diction, meaningful words. And you can do a lot in 6-7 minutes.